Alright, welcome back to this lesson. In this lesson, we're going to talk about the different types of visuals in Ielts Writing Task 1. In Ielts Writing Task 1, you will be required to describe and report a visual data. So it could be on any of these 6 different types of visual data. The first one is the bar chart. The second one is a line graph. The third is pie charts, followed by tables, diagrams, and maps. So you would be required to answer one out of these 6 types of visual data. So one out of these 6 types of visual data would be presented to you in the Ielts Writing Task 1, and then you will be required to write a description and a report about what you've seen in the visual data. In this lesson, we're going to learn how to describe and report data from any of these 6 visual data. First and foremost, I would like to remind you that the Ielts writing has 2 sections. You have the task 1, where you will be asked to write a report on a visual data, and the task 2, which requires you to write an essay on a given topic. So these 2 questions would last for 60 minutes, and you will be required to write at least 150 words for task 1 and 250 words at least for task 2. I would recommend you spend about 20 minutes on the task 1, and then you spend about 40 minutes in the task 2. Now let me show you some of this visual data. The first one is the bar chart. You can see on the screen the bar chart, followed by the pie chart, followed by the pie chart. Then you have the line graph, you have the table, and you have the map, and also the diagram. So any of these 6 types of data could be given to you to describe or give a report about what you've seen in the visual data. It's a very simple task to do if you follow through this lesson and you learn through the information I would share with you in this lesson. Now let's begin with the bar chart. The bar chart compares categories. For example, we want to understand how much students or how many students based on departments and courses have enrolled in a certain university. For example, we have the engineering student, we have the arts student, we have the science student, and we have the business students. So we want to understand and compare the differences between their enrollment among their enrollments. So whether the engineering students or the business students enrolled more than the science and the arts students. So in a bar chart, you have a comparison over different types of categories. However, before we move on, we need to understand how to manage time in this task 1 essay. Remember, you are to spend 20 minutes on this task 1, and in this 20 minutes, you have, I would recommend you plan 5 minutes. You plan for 5 minutes, and then you write for 10 minutes, and you review what you've written for the next 5 minutes. So these are the 3 steps: before writing, during writing, and after writing. So we've explained this in the previous lesson. This is an example of a bar chart. So a bar chart with number of students, and we have the courses they've enrolled in. We've understood that a bar chart displays rectangular bars, and then it shows the categories and values among different types of events or different types of themes or different types of topics. So for example, in this situation, we are looking at a bar chart showing the number of students enrolled in different courses at a university. So you can see the number of students and the courses enrolled. Now let's look at a typical Ielts question. In a typical Ielts question, you would have the question like this. The bar chart illustrates the number of students currently enrolled in 4 different academic courses at a university in 2024. Now the question goes thus, or the prompt goes thus: summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where necessary. In this question, or in this task, we want to select the data from this bar chart and then report this data and make comparisons where necessary. So we have to compare data and at the same time report and select this data directly from the task. And we don't want to write less than 150 words. Now let's look at how to analyze a data like this. If you are given a sample data like this, how do you analyze it? The first thing, you begin with identifying the categories. So identify the categories in this data. And usually a bar chart would have the x-axis and the y-axis, the horizontal axis and the vertical axis. So the horizontal axis has the courses for this question, and the vertical axis has the number of students who have enrolled in this course. So we have the science, we have the arts, we have the engineering, and we have the business courses. And then we can see the number of students enrolled in, for example, from 50 to 400. So this is exactly what you want to do first. You want to check, you want to identify the categories, and then the next thing is to note the values. The next thing is to note the values. Here we have, for science students, they have 300 enrollments. For arts students, we have 200 enrollments. For engineering students, we have 400 enrollments. And for business, we have 250 enrollments. So now, looking at this data, what has this data told you? For me, I would say that this data has engineering students to be the highest enrollment, to have the highest enrollment. So in the engineering department, we have the highest enrollment, which is 400. And then the lowest enrollment is where? Is what? Is the arts courses. So the art courses happens to be the lowest enrollment. Then the business and science are in between the high and the low enrollment. Okay, so we can summarize this trend as the engineering course has the highest enrollment with 400 students, while the art course has the lowest enrollment with 200 students. This is the first stage, or this is the first step when it comes to analyzing the task. The next step is for me to show you how to write the introductory paragraph. There is a certain method which you have to follow when it comes to writing this introductory paragraph. It's the same thing all through the six types of visual data which I've shown you. So the first step is that we're going to begin by identifying and describing the task. So you have to be able to identify and describe the task, and then the next sentence would be a summary of what you've seen in this task. Let's see an example. I would begin my description like this. The bar chart illustrates the number of students enrolled in 4 different academic courses, such as science, arts, engineering, and business at a university in 2024. Now, I want you to take note of one thing. The first statement begins with the bar chart because we are talking about the bar charts. And then we use the word illustrates because it presents. So you can either say the bar chart illustrates or the bar chart presents So remember to add the S to it because here it's a singular subject. So we have the bar chart illustrates, then you summarize what you describe what you have in the data. The second way to do this is to paraphrase the statement. If you look at the statement in the question, go back to the question, you would see that it's written that the bar chart illustrates the number of students currently enrolled in 4 different academic courses at a university in 2024. So that's why we have it this way as well. The bar chart illustrates, or you say the bar chart presents if you don't want to use illustrate, if you don't want to use exactly the word illustrate. So I would use the bar chart presents the number of students who are enrolled in 4 different academic courses, such as science, arts, engineering, and business at a university. That's the first sentence in your introductory paragraph. So the first sentence in your introductory paragraph is to paraphrase the task question, which is the bar chart, the one in the question. So you have to paraphrase. Now we can summarize the trend like this. Overall, it is evident that there was significant variation in student enrollment across the department, with engineering attracting the highest number of students while arts had the lowest enrollment. So here we have written that we have been able to describe in summary what we have in this data. So that is the second sentence. You have to describe what you see in summary in the second sentence of the introductory paragraph. And also your introductory paragraph, just like the one we have here, should be able to give us a glimpse of what you're going to be discussing in the next paragraphs. So immediately you've written your description of the task, the next is to summarize. So when you want to summarize the task, you begin with overall. Okay, overall, it's a beautiful way of starting the second sentence in the introductory paragraph, because you want to give us a glimpse of what the data is all about. So in this case, we have engineering being the highest number of students, and then we have the arts being the lowest number of students. Now we can add it in our notes. This is our notes, and I've written it in the notes like this. So we begin by saying the bar charts illustrates the number of students enrolled in 4 different courses, such as science, arts, engineering, and business at a university in 2024. Overall, the second sentence, it is clearly shown, or you say it is shown, or it is clearly shown that there was significantly variation in student enrollment across the department. Yes, with engineering students or engineering courses attracting the highest number of students, while the arts are having the lowest enrollment. Now we move on to the next paragraph. In the next paragraph, we want to compare the highest number of students with the lowest number of students. We want to compare the trends in this data. So that's why we call it comparison 1. So as you can see here, we have the comparison 1, and in comparison 1, we want to describe most popular trends, the most popular category. So if you have any task about bar charts, usually it's about trend. What is the highest? What is the lowest? What is in the middle? Okay, so you first and foremost in your second paragraph, which is your body paragraph, you want to talk about the most popular trend. In this case, we have the engineering courses. And then the second sentence will be that we want to compare these trends with specific data, maybe the arts and business and science. So we want to compare how this engineering is different from other courses. And mind you, while you are comparing, you have to use exact data found in the task, in the visual data. So you have to use the number exactly the way they are in the data. You have to use, if it is in percentage, you have to present it in percentage. If it is in any form, you have to write it exactly the way the numbers are in the actual data. Okay, so let's look at this. Let's look at this example together. First and foremost, engineering courses happens to be the most popular course with a total of 400 student enrollments. So you can put it in any form, depends on how you like to present your statement. But the fact still remains that the first sentence should tell us that you want to describe and compare the most popular trend. That is the first sentence in that body paragraph. Then you move on by saying that the figure was doubled the number of students in the arts department. Now, in this case, we have compared the 400 students in the engineering department with 200 students in the arts department, being the lowest. So we could say that doubled the amount of the art students is the engineering students. So the engineering student has, or the engineering course has the double of the art courses. Okay, then which recorded the lowest enrollment at 200. So this is exactly how you would describe your second paragraph, which is your first comparison number 1. Now let's write it in our notes. This is our notes. First and foremost, engineering proved to be the most popular course with a total of 400 students enrolled. This figure was doubled the number of students in the arts department, which recorded the lowest enrollment at 200 students. Okay, now let's move on to the third paragraph. In the third paragraph, we want to talk about the comparison 2. The comparison 2 would address the less popular categories like science and business. So arts and engineering are popular because arts is lower and engineering is higher. Okay, but the normal or the less popular categories we have here include science and business. So we're going to compare the data in science and business with other specific data points as well. Now let's look at this example. Science and business courses gained a moderate number of students, falling between the highest and lowest figures. Yeah, because we have the science to be 300 and business to be 250, they fall in between the lowest number, which is arts, and the highest number, which is engineering. After you've written the topic sentence, which is your comparison sentence, then you pick the data. You now move on to talking about the data. So in this point, we have science at 300 students. You can see that the 300 is exactly what we have in the data. So science had 300 students, placing it second in terms of popularity, followed closely behind is business with 250 students. The difference in enrollment between science and business was 50 students, indicating a relatively similar level of interest in these two fields. So I want you to look at this sample answer very closely. So the first point here is that we begin by describing the comparison by saying that science and business course gained a moderate popularity, and they have this. Then we move on to picking, that is selecting data from the question, for selecting numbers from the data. Science had 300, business had 250, and the next is to compare science and business, where we have mentioned that the difference in this enrollment was 50 students. This is exactly how to write the task 1 essay. You have to be able to report and compare data. This is the end of everything. You've written 150 words. If you like, you could add the concluding paragraph. The concluding paragraph in task 1 is not compulsory, it is optional. So you could add the concluding paragraph. Let's see an example of a concluding paragraph. In summary, the charts highlight a clear preference for engineering among students, while the arts courses had comparatively fewer enrollments in the given year. So this is exactly how to conclude if you want to conclude, but it is not compulsory to conclude in task 1 essay. It is optional. So in this case, we have written 150 words. The question comes like this: how do I know if I have written 150 words? You don't have to count one after the other in your text. What you do is to count the number of words at the beginning of the sentence. Let's say you have 15 words in your first line. So if you've written 10 lines, then it means you have written about 150 words. So that is exactly how to do that. You don't have to count one after the other when you are trying to confirm if you've written 150 words. Just count the first line, the number of words on the first line, and then you multiply it by the number of lines you've written. Then you have the exact number of words in that essay, or approximately the number of words in that essay. Now let's move on to the next question type, which is line graph.